I'm Bowlin, and on October 5th, 2011, I walked into an abortion facility and took the life of my first child. I was raised by two wonderful parents, very involved. I was very involved in my youth group growing up. We were very involved in church. Grew up in a great Christian home. I always felt like I needed to do something else or do something more to fit in. I was always part of a big group of friends, but I always felt like there was something missing, or I needed to try harder to have more friends, or make boys like me, or be a part of the prettier crowd. So I always found my identity in the group of friends that I was with or relationships. So my identity was always in something other than a relationship with my church friends. So I kind of just chose my own path at a young age, especially in high school, and was influenced by the pressures of being a teenager in high school, and just choosing the social acceptance over everything else. October 5th, 2011 represents the worst day of my life. Because that day holds my biggest regret. I walked into that clinic just very numb and wasn't thinking for myself. I was very heavily influenced and almost like brainwashed that day by the lies that society was telling me, and the lies that doctors were telling me, and the lies that the very few people that knew were telling me, and the things that they weren't telling me. And I made that decision based on feelings and not really any education behind what I was about to do. And I walked out of the clinic hurt and weak and not empowered at all, because I had just lost a child. But I walked out of that clinic and immediately started suppressing it with convincing myself that there was nothing that I needed to regret. There was nothing that I needed to hurt from, because society had told me, because I wasn't that far along, that it wasn't a baby at that point. And the doctors had told me what a star patient I was, and everything was fine, and the tissue had been removed. Now you need to just go home and rest. And I was handed an envelope with extra strength Tylenol and just told to go sleep for the rest of the day, like I had just had a dental procedure or something. So I went home. My boyfriend at the time and I left, and I was immediately on my own. And for the next 5 years, I suppressed that grief with alcohol and relationships. And even my friends now say, oh, you just, you were young, you wanted to party, you wanted to go out, because that's what young people did. But what people didn't know, and what my friends didn't know, is that I was actually using alcohol and going out in the nightlife as a way to hide and suppress my grief. And I didn't even know that I was suppressing it, but it made me forget. And I did that for a very long time and ended up just hurting myself even more. In and out of more broken relationships, in and out of hangovers, and just more pain. So after another long night of drinking and waking up the next morning and just again feeling lonely and broken, I fell to my knees in my apartment and just cried out that I could not live this way anymore, that I couldn't handle this lifestyle and that it wasn't fulfilling. There was something inside of me telling me that I need to deal with this. I need to figure out why I feel so broken. Because society 5 years prior to that told me that there was no reason that I needed to regret my abortion and feel grief, but I did. And flashbacks, all the time, flashbacks and memories of that day would surface, and I would just press them down for so many years because I didn't think that I had anything to feel. So I ended up meeting several people that changed my life and ended up leading me to a church that had post-abortive recovery for women. And at first I was terrified and I said, no, absolutely not. I'm never going to go through that because I don't need to. But I just felt a pull on my heart that I need to be there. So I started, and I started recovery very half-heartedly, still feeling like I really didn't need to be there. It wasn't necessary, that I was fine without it. And I think that that was just God's humor and Him saying, you have no idea what you're about to go through. So recovery was 12 weeks, and it was the hardest 12 weeks that I've ever been through. It made me relive that day and brought up a lot of pain that I didn't know I even had in me still. Pain towards people that I didn't even know that I was angry towards. Pain towards the situation that I didn't even know that I had. And I stuck it out. And after recovery, I walked out of there a completely different person. And that's who I am today. And it was able to give my child an identity and dignity. And it taught me what love actually is and what Christ's love really is. And taught me what forgiveness is and what grace actually means and redemption. And through that, I was able to forgive myself. I was able to love others differently. And I'm able to love a child that I didn't know that I had until then. And the child that I hope to meet in heaven one day. So now I think I've been called to this mission to show other women that there's hope. And even though society is telling you that there was nothing to grieve and that you don't need to grieve what happened, it's okay to realize that you have regret. And I have been called to this mission to not only help women in crisis pregnancy situations and use my story to save a life, but to also bring women out of this pain and out of grief that they didn't even know that they're going through. So I would tell women now, it's okay to grieve. It's okay to hurt. And there's hope and there's grace and there's forgiveness beyond that pain. But you just have to open your heart and you have to accept it. And it's hard to accept because that means that what you did was wrong. And that's a hard pill to swallow for most post-abortive women. It's still hard for me to swallow. But I hope that my story can show what grace can do and what forgiveness can do. And if you just share your story and accept help, there's hope beyond that. So it's been almost 2 years since I completed the recovery, and I think recovering from something like this, it's lifelong. It doesn't just give you a Band-Aid and you're healed. It's a lifelong process because your heart has to recover too, and you have to accept things that society told you weren't worth accepting. So I ended up leaving the fitness industry where I was very comfortable, I was successful, I loved it, and ended up following this calling to help women. And I have now made a career where every single day I talk about the worst day of my life. And it's hard. It's tough. But I know that if I can save one, then they can save one, and they can save one, and that's worth it to me. So I joined the pro-life movement almost 2 years ago, pretty much right after I came out of recovery. And now I work for Students for Life of America as the National Programs Coordinator. So I get to really dabble in all aspects with the organization, and I get to talk to students, and I get to, I've been contacted by women facing crisis pregnancies, and I get to walk them through choosing life and not going through what I went through. And it's really, I feel like it's my calling, and it's my duty, and it's my mission to fulfill this purpose. So it's my hope that I can use my story and my testimony to save one, or help a woman, post-abortive women, find recovery and find hope like I did. And I'm so encouraged, since being with Students for Life of America, at the young people that step up and be bold and do the things that we ask them to do in the name of saving these babies and saving these women. And I'm encouraged by the students that I get to interact with. They encourage me, and they make me want to fight harder for this mission, because it's scary, it's bold, it's something that is hard to do and hard to talk about. And the students that we get to interact with in this organization, they give me hope, and they encourage me to fight even harder in this mission. And they're world changers, and they're lifesavers. I can't wait to see what we do in the future with Students for Life of America.